All right, everyone, thanks for keeping with us for today. So we have one more session, and we have Jennifer McGillan and Leon Miller. So Jennifer, whenever you're ready.
Okay, are you all getting the correct screen? You are seeing my presentation and not me.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, here we go. Um, so yeah, I'm Jennifer McGillan, and I am the coordinator of manuscripts at Mississippi State. Uh, and this is Archival Surprises Commander William F. Shields and the Memphis Navy Yard. Okay, so this is manuscript number 7. So this was the 7th item donated to us. Contributed to Mississippi State in 1958 by an administrator who may have been a descendant. It's actually one of our earliest military history collections. And so, of course, the surprise for me, I am, as you may have noticed, not from here, was there. I'm like, there was a Navy Yard in Memphis. And indeed, there was. For a brief shining moment, there was. And the rationale was to have a reserve of naval power in the Mississippi Valley in the event that Pensacola was captured by a foreign power, England specifically. They actually mention in some of the congressional sort of discussion that there was really only one naval power they were concerned about, and it was the English. They also hope to entice the experienced watermen of the Mississippi River to join the Navy. Those of you who know anything about the watermen of the Mississippi River, please stop laughing. So, okay. For those of you who don't know anything about the watermen of the Mississippi River, they were mainly rough and tumble rivermen with some bandits thrown in, not the kind of people who are likely to submit to naval discipline. Uh, so, uh, so the Naval Yard, the Memphis Navy Yard operated from 1845 to 1855. And as of 1855, when it closed, it had cost the United States Navy $1 million. It is rarely mentioned in official naval histories. And then when the Navy was finished with it, they donated the yard, buildings and all, to the city of Memphis, who promptly tried to give it back to the Navy, with the stipulation that they make it a full yard and not just a rope walk. And they were unsuccessful in that. So that was truly the end of the Memphis Navy Yard. So, so who's William F. Shields? He enlisted in the Navy in New Orleans in 1812. His first role at sea was serving as a midshipman on the USS Brig Enterprise. He was probably about 12 years old when he enlisted, which was standard. The midshipmen were often very young. That was how they were able to, haul themselves up into the rigging and things like that. But he had a long career in the Navy. His last role at sea was commander of the USS Preble, where he was part of the Pacific Squadron operating off the coast of California during the Mexican-American War in 1848. He'd also previously done diplomatic work in Southeast Asia and Africa. And he was head of the Memphis Navy Yard from 1849 to 1851. And the letters in the collection suggest Shields hated every minute of his time there and may have been constantly in conflict with engineers. So he left. He requested to leave the yard in 1851 and went back to Columbus, Mississippi, where he died 5 years later, aged about 56. Uh, he was also, I feel like compelled to note here, he was also an enslaver. He do not know how many people he was enslaving at the time that he passed, but he does show up in multiple censuses as an enslaver. So the many joys of the Shields collection that I discovered when I pulled it to go through it, because I was like, what do you mean we have something from the War of 1812? But I'm just going to go through them real fast. So we have his midshipman's warrant from the War of 1812. These are all pictures that I took. So then we have some of his diplomatic orders from 1832. And then there's also, this is my favorite. So this is a circular arguing against allowing officers of the Texas Navy to be incorporated into the Navy of the United States on the grounds that the terms of annexation of the Texas Navy included property, but not people, right? So they could absorb all of the ships and yards and what have you, but not the officers. And this was a circular. This was a circular distributed by United States Navy officers to each other. So there was a conversation going on among the officers that they wanted to ask each other to talk to their friends both inside and outside of Congress and advocate against incorporating the officers of the Texas Navy into the United States Navy because it would, as they put it, destroy the confidence which every officer reposes in the permanence of his rank. Now, there's no date on it, but based on when Texas was admitted to the Union, I think it was probably about 1845. And then these are the things that I actually teach with from this collection. And these are materials from William F. Shields' son, W.B. Shields, who went on to be an army doctor and served in the Civil War. And so this is a cholera remedy, and also his medical school class cards, because he went to school in New York. And I know maybe a little hard to see, but one of them is for Valentine Mott, who was a very prominent surgeon. I worked in a medical archives in one of my previous lives, and so I was like, "Ooh, Valentine Mott, there you are," and that's it. That's all. Yeah. So this is I'm happen to be really into naval history. Where I am right now is totally landlocked, so finding this little naval history thing, and also I had no idea that the Memphis Navy Yard even existed. So so there were all kinds of little joys in this for me.
Okay, am I up?
You are. Take it away, Lee.
Everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
And can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me. I'm especially glad to be part of a archives meeting that celebrate archives joy, and especially the joy in being an archivist. I'm a curator of the Louisiana Research Collection at Tulane University Special Collections. And at Tulane, several years ago, we found great joy in discovering unknown treasures in an underappreciated part of our holdings. Several years ago, we undertook a project to convert our traditional vertical files into an actual ephemera collection. Most institutions, even most businesses, have vertical files, but what vertical files are is pretty vague. In the past, in libraries and archives, when someone answered a reference question, they might jot down their answer and drop it into a file. So they'd have easy access to that answer the next time the question popped up. And so the insider secret of vertical files is really that they're for internal use. They exist not so much for researchers as they do for reference staff in order to simplify their responses to future reference questions. Well, because vertical files were not typically concerned with authenticity as much as with simple, easy answers, vertical files over the years often grew to contain a mess, a hodgepodge of pages torn from magazines, journal reprints, pamphlets, calendars, menus, postcards, random notes, and those creepy little things that cause archivists to run screaming from the room, newspaper clippings. That is, archivists would drop into a vertical file anything that might help jog their memory when answering a reference question. Well, when we began reviewing our extensive vertical files at Tulane, they were over 80 years old and contained the typical mix of miscellaneous odds and ends. Worse, they weren't indexed. Things were in sort of a rough alphabetical order, and researchers simply went to the filing cabinets and rifled through them. We were convinced the collection probably had hidden treasures, and so a couple of years ago, we began a project to completely revamp it, and in so doing, convert our vertical file from a collection of miscellaneous stuff into a tightly defined, formal ephemera collection. Our first job was to define ephemera. There is no definitive definition. The Ephemera Society of America's definition includes tobacco tins and textiles, and so really it's not within an archive scope. Wikipedia's definition offers greater clarity, but it includes the wider spectrum of non-print materials and handwritten documents, which for our purposes, we would consider artifactual or archival, not ephemeral. And then there's the definition in the SEAA glossary, which is, fine, okay, as far as it goes. But none of these definitions, however, are practical guides for ephemera acquisitions. And so taking inspiration from all three, we created our own working definition. Brief, uncatalogued, printed items, complete in themselves with sufficient research value to be retained, but not quite so much research value as to be worth a cataloger's time. For our purposes, first, it had to be printed. If we found a typed letter or something handwritten, we usually transferred it to our archival collection. Second, it had to be a complete object in itself, a complete brochure, a complete flyer, a complete menu, not a newspaper clipping, not an article torn from a magazine, not a journal reprint. Third, it had to be too much trouble to catalog. While ephemera can be cataloged using standard cataloging rules, institutions rarely catalog their entire ephemera collections because it's just too costly. Those few institutions that do catalog their entire ephemera collections usually have small collections comprised of only rare pieces. So once we had a working definition, our next step was to adhere to that definition and ruthlessly weed. We went piece by piece through a large collection, analyzing each item, brutally disposing of everything that didn't meet our criteria and re-indexing and rehousing what did. We threw away most newspaper clippings, magazine articles, journal reprints, images torn from calendars, etc. This item by item work was time consuming and labor intensive, taking more than 2 years, but the end result was more than 8,000 file folders, easily searchable online by file folder title with additional folder descriptions when warranted. We had an actual ephemera collection, not a collection of ephemera plus clippings, plus photos, plus whatever else, but an ephemera collection rehoused, redescribed, and searchable. There were several unforeseen, joyful events. First, we discovered that our ephemera collection was, as we had hoped, a hidden treasure with several special strengths: art, politics, and theater. The collection's art ephemera extended back to 1880. It included constitutions and brochures from local art organizations and art clubs, as well as invitations to exhibit and gallery openings. The political ephemera, or campaign literature, extended to around 1840. Political ephemera is an excellent example of how valuable ephemera can be as a basic research fundamental tool. Campaign cards, brochures, and flyers are sometimes dismissed, but they can contain a wealth of information, often not available elsewhere, such as a candidate's image, age, race, political faction, resume, names of supporters, lists of endorsements, a photo of the candidate's family, the candidate's platform, the election date, and on and on. The sheer amount of data political ephemera can contain is underappreciated. We also learned that we had very strong theater ephemera going back to 1820. New Orleans was an important theater town in the 19th century, especially for opera. Many European operas had their North American debut in New Orleans. Ephemera going back to 1820, theater programs, flyers, and broadsides. Here are just a couple examples from the Louisiana WPA theater project. Well, just knowing what we had helped us set acquisition, processing, preservation, and digitization priorities and opened up options for other projects. For example, once we learned the extent and importance of our political ephemera, we scanned it and created an online political ephemera collection. Once we learned that we had an excellent restaurant and bar collection, particularly important for New Orleans, we created an online restaurant collection with menus, restaurant brochures, and flyers. Another surprise benefit was that our ephemera collection became our most heavily used collection by far. Almost every researcher from undergrad to postdoc uses our ephemera at some point, regardless of their topic or level of research. Upper-level researchers should at least check it. For undergraduates, it's a good place to start their project. Undergrads often have trouble getting ideas for class papers. Ephemera, with its wide range of topics and formats, from programs and flyers to menus and brochures, is a great place for undergrads to get ideas. Another unforeseen result was that our ephemera collection became an excellent outreach tool. Almost every election, for example, there are articles about our political ephemera. And our ephemera was an excellent source for videos that our PR department sends out to journalists and donors, videos that are available on YouTube. Another example of outreach is that organizing our restaurant and bar ephemera led us to discover that we have very strong gay bar ephemera. That led to the donation of a large gay ephemera collection, and that led to the local LGBTQ community center donating their records to us. I'd like to leave you with my favorite piece of ephemera. This is a simple restaurant flyer that would have been passed out on a corner on Bourbon Street. But what I like about it is in the middle where it says whole chicken loaf. In New Orleans, loaf is another word for sandwich. And what I like about this is that only in New Orleans would someone even consider making a sandwich out of an entire fried chicken. Just to recap, narrowly define and ruthlessly weed. Ephemera is not just for undergrads anymore, but is used by the full range of researchers for a wide range of projects. And in addition to being a research tool, ephemera can be invaluable for community outreach, publicity, and donor relations, if it's well organized, if it's easy to use, and if you know what you have. Thank you.
Thank you. I could go for a whole chicken loaf right now.
Yes.
Sounds delicious. Ephemera is so fun. So we're opening it up for questions, comments for our presenters. In the chat, Kiera said that was fantastic. Gabby said that was awesome. Ephemera is so fun. Mariah said this honestly helped me understand the definition of ephemera. Thank you. And so it's a great presentation, Lee. So that
Thank
was
you.
fun. Those were both fun. Those were both a lot of fun. I enjoyed them.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Lee. That was great. We have vertical files that got converted to manuscript collections at various times, and they did not. I don't know if they got weeded first or not. I don't think so. But one of them is one that I think we just moved the whole title over when we did it. It was called Segregation Integration MISC.
Oh, yeah.
and it is indeed extremely miscellaneous.
Mhm.
But whatever people were kind of throwing in there was things that people brought in from the community or that they were pulling off of telephone poles or whatever. So there is some resistance, but mostly it's oppression, to give you an idea of the contents of this file. And we do use it a lot for undergraduates, but really we send a lot of people to it, and I think my colleagues have incorporated it into one of their digitization grants, and we'll be able to digitize some of that too.
To me, part of the problem is sometimes that if something is in an archives, people automatically think that it's archival. But archives have all kinds of things that aren't archival. And you sort of analyze it and you think, well, is this archival or if it's not? And if it's not archival, you don't have to use archival practice when you deal with it. You can do something else.
Right.
A couple more comments from the chat. The mighty MISC. We all have a MISC. Or
Yes.
the dreaded assorted general miscellaneous. Andy said he enjoyed that, found vertical files here, but what surprised me was newspaper clippings with no dates and only parts of articles. I think we've all dealt with that. Like, where did you come from? When are you from?
Why did we only keep half of this?
What are
And
you?
why don't you throw it away? I think people have a hard time throwing things away. But for me, throwing things away is the favorite part of my job.
Archivists love.
I live to do a session.
I feel like there's two types of archivists. There's the ones who are like, I must hoard and keep everything because it could be useful. And then there's others who are like, only got to keep what's useful, who love weeding. I agree, Leah. I love to weed. Um, ugh, so much fun.
I think so many archives began and was sort of founded by the so-called great collectors, people who just swept things in. They just sucked it in, they didn't care what it was. And then the second or third generation people come along with training who have to do something with that, who have to deal with that. And that's hard to do sometimes.
Yeah. That is true. And also, Dean, I understand, like, sometimes it's a really good box. Like, you gotta keep the
Yeah.
good boxes. You never know when you need a good box.
Jennifer, I had a very specific question about which censuses he's listed as a slave owner in. My boyfriend does research about the opinions of naval officers about race.
Oh,
So
okay. I think it was, I think it was 1850 and 1860, and maybe also 1840.
okay.
But if you want to,
He'll email you
email-
if that's not
Yeah.
enough information.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
because I've been, as part of this presentation, I was digging into him a little bit more, because I've been, trying to just learn more about the man, and this time around was when I discovered, I'm like, oh, you did own slaves, okay. Um, and also how many children he had, and so on. And like I said, one of his sons did fight for the Confederacy. Uh, yeah. So I do have some notes on how many how many people he enslaved in those different censuses as well.
Very good. Akira had a very good point in the chat. My understanding is you start out wanting to keep everything, and as you spend more time in the field, you get more excited about throwing things away. And at least that's what they observed, and I have observed that too. It's a good description. There's been many a time where we've gone to reprocess a collection or to go back and look at a collection. We open the box. Like, why?
Why? Yeah.
Why?
Well, with the Shields collection, I did have a moment of why, because it was actually, when I first looked at it, it was two boxes. There was one full of originals and one entirely full of photocopies. So someone had gone through and photocopied the entire thing. And I was like, why? Why did you do this? So, um, yeah. So I deaccessioned the photocopies directly into the circular file. I'm like, no.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible that they just didn't want, but these, like, his stuff is actually in pretty good shape. Um, I would say, about to say, despite it being so old, but also possibly because it is so old. The paper is pretty high rag content. Um, and I think no one's like coming here looking for the papers of naval officers because we're landlocked. Um, so yeah, so I think he's sort of sat undisturbed for decades, literally decades. This was, yeah, donated. The archive started here, like special collections started here in 1948. So, and he was donation number 7 in 1958. So there was not a whole lot going on at the time.
Cool. All right. Any more questions, comments? Anything else for today? All right. Well, we will see you all tomorrow morning, same time, same place. And we'll get to do this all over again. It'll be fun. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you to
all.
all of you for coming,
Thank you.
and thank you to all of our presenters for great presentations today. This is always so much fun every year. All right.